Nah, man. I'm pretty fucking far from okay. Kept moving. I'll put on makeup, wardrobe as the character, and I'll come out. And if I can fool my dogs, let's say if they bark at me, because one of my characters
think you're a think you're a
exactly,
stranger.
then I know I've metamorphosized into the character.
He was not a box office superstar. He didn't need blockbusters to prove his name. But he was the giant who made all of Hollywood tremble. Ving Rhames, the man who turned every role into an unforgettable nightmare. And that fear did not only live on the screen. He was once held at gunpoint by American police right at his own doorstep because they mistook him for a burglar. His vicious dog was suspected of mauling a worker to death, a case that sent shockwaves through the press. Every step Ving Rhames took on a film set was like a shadow cast over everything, making colleagues wary. And that is why he was called the scariest actor in Hollywood. Rewind to the beginning, a rough childhood in Harlem, New York. A place where every street corner could turn into a battlefield, where gangs, drugs, and poverty haunted every household. It was there on May 12, 1959, that a baby named Irving Ramesses Rhames let out his first cry. His father, Ernest Rhames, worked an ordinary maintenance job, while his mother, Rether, stayed at home to care for the family. There was no spotlight, no privilege. Rhames grew up on streets full of traps where showing strength was sometimes the only way to survive. Harlem in the 1960s was both radiant with black music and art and dark with violence and hunger. Yet what no one could have predicted was that the boy from that unforgiving neighborhood would step into a remarkable artistic journey. Rhames studied at the High School of Performing Arts in Manhattan, where young talents were shaped. Later, he attended SUNY Purchase, and it was there that his classmate Stanley Tucci gave him the nickname Ving. That name stuck with him for life, becoming the stage name the whole world would know. But the true turning point came when Rhames was accepted into Juilliard, one of the most prestigious performing arts schools in the world. Rhames once said, "Juilliard taught me technique, but Harlem taught me strength." And it was the fusion of those two opposing worlds that created Ving Rhames, raw, yet refined, terrifying, yet impossible to look away from. The beginning of his career with small roles. Ving Rhames spent many years in Hollywood playing small parts and supporting roles. He didn't have the handsome looks of a matinee idol, and he was not a box office star, but he carried a weapon that forced people to notice him. A powerful physique, a deep, gravelly voice that rumbled like thunder, and eyes that could silence an entire room. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Rhames appeared in a series of works such as Jacob's Ladder 1990 and The People Under the Stairs 1991, where he played a reckless criminal. He also appeared in several television series, including Miami Vice Spencer, For Hire, and New York Undercover. Rhames was often cast as a gangster, a thug, or a mercenary. Hollywood had effectively boxed him in as the face of menace. But what set Rhames apart was that he never played these roles as one-dimensional villains. A cold stare, a line delivered with heavy emphasis, or even a half smile that left audiences unsettled. Those small details carried weight, and they made people remember him long after the movie ended. And then, the golden opportunity arrived. Before that moment, Hollywood saw Ving Rhames as just another supporting actor there to fill space, big black silent, usually cast as a criminal or a mercenary. But Quentin Tarantino thought differently. When writing the script for Pulp Fiction, Tarantino needed a Marcellus Wallace, the crime boss of Los Angeles. Marcellus was not the loud, flamboyant mafia type, but a silent beast, powerful, threatening, able to make his men tremble with just a glance. In Ving Rhames, he found exactly that. A man who came from the rough streets of Harlem, with the build of a boxer and a deep, thunderous voice. It was a rare combination. Pulp Fiction became a phenomenon. With a budget of only $8 million, it grossed over $213 million worldwide. The film won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival and the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. And at the center was Ving Rhames, not a box office star, yet suddenly unforgettable to Hollywood. After Pulp Fiction, Rhames went from an anonymous supporting actor to what critics called a test of tension. If a movie featured him, audiences knew there would be a certain energy, frightening yet magnetic, that would dominate the screen. 2 years later, Rhames stepped into another legend, Mission Impossible, where fear became a brand. In the sleek spy world of Tom Cruise, he played Luther Stickle, a massive black hacker, a man of few words, but always the one Ethan Hunt needed by his side. What made it fascinating was this hackers on screen were usually portrayed as nerdy and weak. But when Ving Rhames became Luther, the character turned into a towering wall of strength, a presence so commanding that even the CIA seemed cautious. The result was beyond expectations. Mission Impossible. 1996, made on a budget of $80 million, grossed more than $457 million worldwide, launching a billion-dollar franchise. And Luther Stickle, a character with no explosive fight scenes and no rooftop train chases. Like Ethan Hunt, still became a defining face of the entire series. In fact, aside from Tom Cruise, only Ving Rhames has appeared in every installment from the very first film to Dead Reckoning, 2023. As for salary, the role of Luther made Rhames one of the most steadily well-paid faces in the franchise. Rumors suggest that for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol 2011, he was paid as much as $7.7 million for a cameo that lasted less than a minute. A shocking figure proving the brand power of the name Ving Rhames. If Pulp Fiction gave Rhames the chance to be the boss that audiences both hated and respected, then Mission Impossible turned him into a global brand, a symbol of fear in silence. Compared to Samuel L. Jackson, who explodes with shouting, Lawrence Fishburne, who commands with intellect, or Denzel Washington, who captivates with sharp precision, Ving Rhames represents a different force, the silent pressure. He instills fear by not doing too much at all. A deliberate silence from Rhames could be more terrifying than any outburst. From the explosion of 1994 to his enduring place in a billion-dollar franchise, Ving Rhames has proven one thing: he never needed blockbusters to prove his name. It was his very presence that made Hollywood tremble. On screen, Ving Rhames spread fear with his gravelly voice and threatening silence, but what few expected was that in real life, he also carried an aura that made people uneasy. Life off-screen made people afraid in a different way. Nearly killed on his own doorstep when police mistook him for a burglar. It was a quiet afternoon in 2016 in Santa Monica. Ving Rhames, dressed casually in shorts inside his own mansion, heard a knock at the door. He stepped out thinking it was a neighbor or a delivery. But as soon as the door opened, the scene before him felt like a nightmare. A flash from a gun barrel, several armed officers aiming their weapons directly at his chest. Voices shouting, "Get down!" Now Rhames froze, unable to understand what was happening. One wrong move, one finger slipping on a trigger, and the man who had once spread fear on the big screen could have fallen on his own doorstep, simply for opening the door. The shocking reason: a neighbor had called 911 reporting that a large black man had broken into a house. But that man was none other than Ving Rhames, the rightful owner of the home. The situation was only diffused when one of the officers recognized him. It turned out that the officer's son had once played basketball with Rhames's son. The incident ended with an apology from the police, but the scars it left behind were not so easy to erase. Speaking on The Clay Kane Show in 2018, Rhames recalled the horror: "I opened the door and saw a gun pointed right at my head. If it hadn't been for that officer recognizing me, I might not be here to tell this story." For Rhames, it was not just a personal ordeal, but a lasting wound. It revealed a chilling truth that a large black man can instantly be seen as a threat. The irony was bitter. On screen, Rhames was known for roles that inspired fear. But in that moment, he became the victim of that same fear in real life. The weight of prejudice was so great that it could turn a Hollywood star, the legal owner of a mansion, into an intruder inside his own home. The 2016 Santa Monica incident shocked fans. It not only stirred sympathy for Rhames, but also sparked a larger conversation about race, about how society perceives the fear attached to black men. For Rhames, it was an experience that taught him something deeply personal. Sometimes fear does not come from the movies, but from the suspicious eyes of the people around you. Less than a decade earlier, in 2007, the name Ving Rhames had also dominated headlines after a shocking event: the killer dogs and a controversial death. In the yard of a sprawling Los Angeles mansion, the body of Jacob Adams, A house caretaker who had worked for the Rhames family for more than 20 years was found. News exploded instantly with sensational headlines. Ving Rhames's vicious dog's maul longtime worker. The scene was described in chilling detail. 3 massive mastiffs and a bulldog owned by Rhames growling and snarling, forcing police and paramedics to struggle to bring them under control. That image alone was enough to make the public's hair stand on end. An actor already famous for his intimidating presence was now being tied to the label of master of killer dogs. But the truth was not as simple as the press portrayed. A later autopsy revealed that Jacob Adams had died from a cardiac condition, a sudden heart attack, and there was no evidence proving that the dogs had fatally attacked him. There were injuries on Adams's body, but they were not enough to conclude that the dogs directly caused his death. Rhames quickly spoke out. Expressing his grief, Jacob was like family. We had been together for more than 2 decades. I am heartbroken at his loss, and even more heartbroken that my dogs have been turned into killers in the eyes of the public. Still, the public was not quick to forget. The image of bloodthirsty dogs tied to Ving Rhames, even unfairly, became another piece in the puzzle of his scary legend. It deepened the sense that danger and unease always seemed to surround Rhames, whether on a movie set or in his own backyard. What made it even more striking was that in popular culture, pets are often seen as reflections of their owners. And the fact that Rhames's mastiffs were caught at the center of this storm only gave the public more reason to believe that he was not just frightening on screen, but carried with him an unpredictable, dangerous energy, in real life as well. If the incidents with the police or the fierce dogs made people look at Rhames with caution, then his private life carried its own shadows rarely spoken of. Behind the cold, quiet exterior, Rhames was not a man who could be easily read. The mystery surrounding his personal relationships only fueled curiosity and at times a different kind of fear. Marriage and cracks. Beneath the surface. In 1994, Ving Rhames married Valerie Scott. The marriage did not last long, and the two parted ways quietly. No scandals, no noise, but the breakup only made him more elusive in the eyes of the press. By 2000, Rhames entered his second marriage with Deborah Reed. The couple had 2 children together and later adopted a daughter. This family lived almost entirely in seclusion, rarely appearing in public. But silence did not mean peace. In many reports, Deborah was described as the patient woman standing behind a man who could not be easily read. Rumors once circulated that Rhames carried his harshness and iron discipline from the film set into his family life. Although never confirmed, they contributed to an image of Ving Rhames as a man even his loved ones regarded with caution. Little-known disputes. Ving Rhames was not the type to be constantly in court over scandals, yet a few cases did emerge. Notably, he once filed a lawsuit against the producers of the film The Red Canvas for failing to pay him the full salary promised in his contract. The matter did not stir major headlines in Hollywood, but it highlighted his toughness. He would never allow anyone to shortchange him, even over a small contractual issue. That was another defining trait of Rhames. A man who did not need to raise his voice yet was always prepared to demand justice to the very end. For Hollywood producers, it made him an unpredictable figure, one they could neither dismiss nor push around. A private life, still shrouded in mystery. Unlike many stars of his era, Ving Rhames did not chase the spotlight outside the movie set. He rarely attended lavish parties and almost never appeared on lighthearted talk shows. People knew him mainly through his roles, while his private life remained hidden under a veil of mystery. And it was precisely this silence, combined with scattered scandals, that made Rhames seem even more frightening in the public imagination. A large, cold, quiet man whose thoughts no one could ever truly know. After broken marriages and a closed-off family life, many believed Rhames had chosen to disappear from controversy. But then Hollywood began buzzing with another story. Not about his private life this time, but about something that made the entire film industry wary money. The $1 million salary rumor, the most expensive. 39 Seconds in Hollywood. In Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, Luther Stickle, the character tied to Rhames since the very first film, was almost absent. The movie was heavily promoted with the return of Tom Cruise, Jeremy Renner, Paula Patton, and Simon Pegg. But audiences were waiting for one thing: Would Luther show up? The answer was yes, but only in the last 39 seconds of the film. Luther appeared in a short scene sharing a brief conversation with Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise, and then disappeared from the screen. Just enough to make longtime fans breathe a sigh of relief, just enough to keep the storyline intact, but with no real screen time. Yet rumors spread quickly across film forums, and Hollywood news sites Ving Rhames had been paid as much as $7.7 million for those exact 39 seconds. The figure shocked everyone. Broken down, each second of his appearance in Ghost Protocol was worth nearly $200,000, making it more expensive than any cameo role in modern film history. Of course, there was never any official confirmation from Paramount or Rhames. Some sources suggested the figure might have been exaggerated. But for audiences, the story became a legend. Ving Rhames was the man Hollywood had to pay millions just to step into the frame for less than a minute. The rumor also revealed something else, the unique position of Luther Stickell in Mission Impossible. Though not a lead character, Luther was an irreplaceable piece of the puzzle. Tom Cruise needed a trusted ally, and audiences needed a familiar face to connect the films together. And only Ving Rhames could bring that balance, which meant that when he named his price, the studio had no choice but to agree. The result was that Ghost Protocol became a massive hit, grossing more than $694 million worldwide. And Luther Stickell, though barely there, was still remembered. As for the rumor of the $1 million 39 seconds, it kept spreading, reinforcing Rhames's image as a man Hollywood dared not underestimate. But there was one moment that completely changed the way people saw Ving Rhames. A human moment, when the fearsome giant broke down in tears. In 1998, Hollywood held its breath when the name Ving Rhames was called for Best Actor in a miniseries or motion picture, made for television thanks to his haunting performance in Don King Only in America. It was the biggest victory of Rhames's career. The entire room expected him to walk up to the stage in his usual manner, cold, fierce, with a voice like rolling thunder. But no one expected that moment to become one of the most unforgettable sights in Golden Globe history. As Rhames stepped forward, the towering man whose face had struck fear into millions suddenly choked up. His eyes reddened, his voice trembled, and he broke down in tears in front of thousands. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Rhames invited Jack Lemmon, the legendary elder statesman, a face etched into American cinema, to join him on stage. The hall went silent. And then Rhames placed the prestigious Golden Globe into Lemmon's hands, speaking slowly, each word carved into history. Being an artist is about giving. And I feel that Jack Lemmon is an artist who has given so much. The entire room erupted in applause. In that instant, no one saw Rhames as the man who spread fear. Before them stood a giant bowing to humanity, willing to give up his own victory to honor a senior icon. Lemmon embraced Rhames tightly, both men in tears, and together, they created one of the most moving moments in the history of live television. From that moment on, Rhames was no longer just the man with the cold eyes that silenced a room. He became a symbol of humanity. Audiences still feared Rhames on screen, but in real life, they respected him for reminding Hollywood that art is not a race for glory, but an act of giving. That moment became etched into Rhames's legacy. The fear he inspired was no longer simply intimidation, but reverence. A quiet kind of power, one that transcended his roles and touched the human heart. And the scariest man in Hollywood revealed a compassionate heart. In 2015, Rhames made a surprising appearance in the ADT Always Cares Week of Service campaign in Los Angeles. It was not a red carpet, not flashing lights. Wearing gloves, holding a shovel, he worked alongside thousands of volunteers to help renovate the grounds of a place called Home, an organization that supports underprivileged youth. People were stunned. A multi-million-dollar action star, often cast as a crime boss, was now quietly gardening, painting walls, and fixing up corners of a shelter. Rhames explained simply, "Whether I am at home or away, I always need a sense of safety and peace of mind. I believe everyone deserves that. And that's why I am honored to contribute in my own small way." It was not the only time he revealed his compassion. In the 1990s, while filming The Saint of Fort Washington, a story about the homeless Rhames reunited with his own younger brother, who at the time was living on the streets. He did not turn away. Instead, Rhames brought him home, helped him find work, and guided his lost life back onto the right path. He once said, "I realized that all of us are our brother's keeper. We have to take responsibility for those less fortunate." Those words taken apart from Rhames's fierce exterior might surprise people, but within the bigger picture, they made his image even more unpredictable. A man who could strike fear with a single look, but also someone who could shed tears and extend a helping hand. Beyond that, Rhames has been involved in numerous campaigns to raise awareness from stroke prevention to racial equality to educational support. He often did it quietly, without fanfare, without turning it into a PR stunt. Perhaps it was this silence that made people even more surprised. When he was not playing a gangster, when his face was not frozen into a cold stare, Rhames was a quiet man choosing to help the world instead of boasting about it. And perhaps what made the public fear Rhames was not only the terrifying roles or his boxer's physique. It was also the fact that no one ever knew who he would be in the next moment. A menacing Marcellus Wallace, a stoic hacker, Luther Stickle, or a man quietly carrying bags of soil at a shelter for children in need. That is the mystery. The very thing that makes Ving Rhames both frightening and admirable. In Hollywood, people often mention Ving Rhames with two words, fear and power. But behind that fear lies something else that makes both colleagues and producers wary a power index. In the ruthless world of cinema, power does not only come from roles on screen, it is measured in contracts, numbers, and the cold precision of negotiations. Wealth and income, Ving Rhames's power index. According to multiple reliable sources, such as Celebrity Net Worth Ving, Rhames's net worth is estimated at around $25 million. This figure does not place him at the very top of Hollywood, but it is more than enough to prove the status of a man who was never considered a box office superstar. For Rhames, there was never a need for a blockbuster with his name on it. He could still live at a multi-million-dollar level, and that was his true strength. The centerpiece of Rhames's assets is his lavish Los Angeles compound. In 2000, he purchased a mansion of nearly 10,000 square feet, with 7 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms. In 2005, he acquired the adjacent property, an even larger mansion of over 13,000 square feet. Together, the two estates formed a massive double residence, a property so large it became known as his twin mansion. The estate not only features living rooms as vast as hotel lobbies, but also includes a private swimming pool, a luxurious reflecting pool, a tennis court, and sprawling gardens. Ironically, this very home was also the site of the 2016 incident when police aimed their guns at Rhames after mistaking him for a burglar. A bitter paradox, the mansion that symbolized his power and success nearly became the place that cost him his life. Rhames also knew not only how to hold on to wealth, but how to move it strategically. He once owned a Tuscan-style mansion in Brentwood, nearly 700 square feet, which he listed for $2.7 million in 2008. In 2010, he sold another Brentwood estate he had purchased for more than $6.5 million, letting it go for around $5.5 million. These transactions showed that Rhames was not just an actor, but someone who treated real estate as a calculated investment channel. Quiet, but powerful. What is striking is that Rhames never flaunted it. No flashy supercars, no boastful art collections, no million-dollar watch showcases. He chose instead to let his wealth remain hidden, much like his acting style, quiet, yet carrying undeniable weight. When Hollywood and the public speak of him, the respect he commands comes not only from his heavy-hitting roles, but from the way Rhames controlled his wealth and his life with discretion, composure, and unshakable authority. When money also became a kind of fear. What made studios wary was not only the cold eyes he carried on set, but the fact that Rhames could live comfortably with a $25 million fortune without chasing after any blockbuster. He had the power to choose scripts, the power to say no, and even the power to be more expensive than some box office stars. That financial independence turned Rhames into a fearsome man. In a different sense, someone no one could pressure. Life today, as Ving Rhames crosses 65 now, at 65, Ving Rhames still keeps to a life so quiet it borders on unreadable. In a Hollywood where everyone seems eager to flaunt their luxury, he chooses silence, stepping back, appearing only when it truly matters. And every time he does return, The media and audiences alike take notice. Even past 60, Rhames has not stepped away from the screen. He is returning as Luther Stickell in Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, set to premiere in theaters on May 23, 2025. This is the 8th installment of the Mission Impossible saga, considered the final chapter of Tom Cruise's action franchise. Beyond that, Rhames also stars in Uppercut, playing Elliot, a former boxer and gym owner. Uppercut is scheduled for a limited U.S. release on February 28, 2025. However, not all news about him reassures fans. At the end of 2024, a promotional video for a barbershop in Las Vegas went viral when Rhames appeared with an unusual look, wide eyes, and a tense expression. Fans quickly expressed concern for his health. Reports suggested Rhames had left New York and moved to the Las Vegas desert just weeks earlier. What made the moment even more heartbreaking was that Rhames had just endured a profound loss. His mother passed away in 2023. In a rare interview, he broke down, admitting that her death made him reflect deeply on his own life. Perhaps that is why his appearance carried more weariness, the visible marks of age grief and quiet contemplation. Family and his constant silence. Privately, Rhames has remained with his second wife, Deborah Reed, since 2000. And together they have 3 children. In stark contrast to his fearsome on-screen presence, he lives as a quiet husband and father, far removed from the noise of show business. Audiences rarely see him at talk shows or lavish red carpet parties. He seems content with a discreet life focused only on film and family. A calm giant in his twilight years. Influence and legacy. When Ving Rhames became a symbol. Beyond the screen. A symbol of black strength. Before Rhames, most black roles in Hollywood were confined to familiar molds. The criminal, the helpless victim, or the comic relief beside a white lead. Rhames shattered that mold. He brought to the screen a black man who carried power, depth, complexity, and his own inner force. This opened doors for a new generation of actors like Forrest Whitaker, Idris Elba, and Michael B. Jordan. Men who could explore strong, multidimensional characters without being confined by outdated stereotypes. What made Rhames respected was not only his ability to transform into characters, but also the style he brought to cinema's silence that spoke louder than words. While many of his peers sought to explode on screen, Rhames built an art of restraint. He proved that with just a look, a gesture, or a pause, a character could be seared into memory. This influence extended to directors, writers, and even co-stars, forcing them to rethink how they built characters to match his presence. A symbol of endurance. Not everyone sustains relevance for more than 30 years in Hollywood, a place where trends shift constantly. But Rhames has endured from low-budget indie films to billion-dollar franchises. This proved he was not simply lucky with one breakout role, but a man who knew how to adapt, preserve his brand, and maintain artistic value. That endurance made him a model for younger actors. Success does not lie only in fleeting fame, but in building a long career with real weight. Today, when people mention Ving Rhames, they don't just recall a single role. They recall a feeling, the quiet threat, the understated power. It has gone beyond any one character becoming a cultural symbol. In commercials, just his voice is enough to create a brand. In films, just a few minutes on screen are enough to etch his name into memory. This symbolic power set Rhames apart. He was never a box office star, but he became a star in the minds of audiences.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast.
There is still so much more to explore. Stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.